Welcome, Miracle Makers. We are on with Nassim Haramein, and it's such a pleasure. I am a fan and a student and a delegate.
Oh, wow.
And I've been following you since, I think, before you had the Resonance Project.
Really? Wow.
A student of physics, so,
All right.
and I've just had the pleasure of spending time and learning from you. And my darling husband, Greg, this is our date. The show Miracle Makers with our little children and our entourage with us normally. We
Wonderful.
spend time on air with people we just are in love with.
Oh, thank
and
you.
are doing the miraculous around the world. So I want to start with, I know a lot about you, but our audience might not. You were born in Geneva, Switzerland. You started having spontaneous awakenings at age about 9.
Yeah.
And quite a journey from 9 years old to where you are today.
I had multiple esoteric experiences even prior to 9, but yeah, around 9 and 10, I started to wonder about the structure of the universe and reality and how I got here and what am I doing here and all these kind of existential questions. And I just, existential questions are important, and I was just kind of stunned that wasn't seemed to be a priority for all the rest of the people. I was wondering what's going on. Why aren't people asking those questions and just going to work and doing their thing? And so
what's amazing is you ask really brilliant questions, and as a physics self-trained in physics, self-taught in most areas of your life, you come at it from a different angle.
Right.
And you help connect a lot of dots, a lot of theories, a lot of ideas. And the one that you're presenting right now really develops our consciousness, which is, when did you realize that you were a conscious, aware being?
Well, I was trying to figure out what it means to say you're conscious and where does it start, because there was a conceptual issue, and that is we're basically a sack of water, mostly water, and a bunch of minerals, right? And we're saying, well, we're different than this water over there and these minerals over there because we're conscious and it's not.
Yes.
And to me, that didn't make sense. Like, there must be some kind of continuous link, that involves consciousness all along, maybe different levels of consciousness, but there must have been some kind of mechanics that makes it so that at the end of the whole process, there's a conscious, what we call a self-aware being, but that's a process all along. It's not somehow, just a miracle, like all of a sudden it happens, and
like that,
by a fluke, all of a sudden consciousness happened, right?
Something happened, and this bag is different from this bag.
Exactly.
Right.
That didn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Right.
And a truth has to be explainable. A theory that stands true has to be in all levels, the smallest level all the way up to the grandest level.
That's right.
And so if we have a sac that's non-biological, that's not considered aware, and then we have a sac that's biological and considered aware, there's a disconnect.
Right.
And that's what your latest theory talks about.
Right. It basically, coming from the physics, some of the equations I wrote, which made very, very precise predictions of fundamental things like the radius and the mass of a proton. Now I found a solution for the electron that's extremely accurate, and so on. These equations actually says something very profound about the material world. And it says that the material world is actually what we call atoms, which are made out of 99.99999% space.
Nothing.
Yeah, well, space,
Yes.
which in quantum physics is not nothing. It's
Yes.
it's full of energy.
Yes.
That actually that is the field of energy that produces matter.
99.9999% is energy that's producing matter.
Matter. Yeah, the space is what makes the
The
material
matter.
world,
Yes.
not the material world that defines the space.
Yes.
And so basically you could think of space as this fluid of quantum fluctuations. And there's region in this fluid that have little vortices. And where there's vortices, we call it matter.
Yes.
We see it as organized matter, like a
Anything-
particle, an atom, a sun, a galaxy, you know.
Anything that has movement is matter.
Mhm.
Anything that has a vortices, has a gravitational, something moving around it,
That's right.
is matter.
Right.
And most matter has a lot of space around it
Right.
that's creating a current or a vibrational flow.
Right, exactly. So basically, when we look at a subatomic particle, all we can say about it, because people visualize this as like little billiard balls,
Yes.
but they're not. We know that in physics, like these are not billiard balls. They're just regions of space where there's a large electromagnetic field or electrostatic field. Like a proton is just a charge. We see there's a region of space where there's a high
Yes.
charge there. So basically what I'm saying is that the charge is actually the result of the space around it, right?
So a proton, a neutron, an electron, the center of every atom, and an atom is in everything that matters.
Yeah.
And the charge behind it is what you're talking about now.
Right.
Some electrons all negative, but some magnetic, the bringing energy in, are those?
What I'm saying is that charge, which makes up the material
Yes.
world, is actually a phenomenon that's the result of the energy that's in the space. Just like if you have a bath of water, right?
Yes.
And you have a rubber ducky in it, and you pull the plug, the water over here is incoherent. So it's
Yes.
like going the little molecules are going all over the place. But near the drain, the molecules are all coherently moving in a vortex. And if you put the rubber ducky there, it's going to look like gravity, right?
Yes.
It's going to look like it's being attracted. And even the surface is going to look like it's a curve, right? Which is how
Yes.
Einstein described gravity, the curvature of space-time.
Yes.
And so, but it's all water, right? And so we think of this gravitational well as separated from the space, as if
Yes.
the vortex in the bath was separated from the water, but actually it's just that it's more coherent here and less coherent there. And so here we say there's something, and
Yeah.
over there we say there's nothing.
Yes.
And so basically you have this field of information, this field of energy in space, in the structure of space, just like there's radio waves in the space right now,
Yes.
there's electromagnetic waves like infrared.
Our heart is conducting an electrical frequency as
yeah,
well, magnetic frequency.
yeah, there's that in the
Yes.
space and all this stuff. We're not necessarily aware of it. Well, there's fluctuations that are occurring at billions of times smaller than an atom at the Planck scale that are the pixel that makes up all the material world. So that it's space that makes up matter.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
So the charge on space is creating matter.
matter. That's what we call matter.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so when we think of matter,
Mm-hmm.
we think of that as solid.
Right.
How do you think of it?
Because it's only, well, we think of it as solid because all we got is an electrostatic charge here and an
Yes.
electrostatic charge here, and they can't go through each other because they're
Yes.
bumping against each other. But nothing is really touching.
Yes,
It's
nothing
just
is touching.
no, it's just
Yeah.
space against space. You know, like two magnets that repel each other, right?
Yes.
And so it really the magnets don't touch. It's just the field that bounces the magnets away from each other. So basically, it's a completely different way to think of matter and reality around us. Meaning that basically, and Einstein said this,
Yes.
that matter objects are an extension of space. They're just space extending itself, producing what we call the material
Yes.
world. And so in the equations I wrote, I showed that actually, and it's very accurate, it's extremely accurate, it works to think of matter that way, that those fluctuations at the quantum level are like bits of information.
So this is the matter, bits of information is the source, the space there, the source of consciousness. How would you explain the source of consciousness?
Okay, so that's the thing. So imagine that these vortices in space are basically creating feedback, right? Because
Yes.
like it's spinning, so things are. So in the bath example, it's
Yes.
like if it was going down the drain and the drain was connected to the spigot, and so it kept on going around, right?
Right.
And so every time it went around, it would be a little different, right? The particles would have, changed a little bit.
Shifted where they were located.
Exactly. So it's
And-
different sets of information and so on. So it's like a feedback of information through the structure of space. Like
Yes.
this, like the little atoms are spinning, like photons are being emitted, photons are being absorbed.
And energy is being created in that scenario.
Right.
And also, is that when you talk about wormholes?
That's right.
Okay.
So that actually, this whole spinning dynamics creates like vortices in the structure of space-time,
Yeah.
that like wormholes that are micro wormholes that are now being discovered by the mainstream, as
Physics
well.
as well,
Yeah.
yes.
So they kind of catching up to what I've been saying, and these wormholes are like connecting all these vortices that we call matter everywhere, all these particles, so that the whole thing is entangled. Okay, and so when I do my calculations, which again are extremely exact,
Yes.
it shows that the whole thing is wormholed together, so that if I take the information that's present in one proton, I
Yes.
can find the information of all the other protons in the universe.
Because everything is connected.
It's connected through
And
these wormhole
through
structures.
the wormhole structures,
Yeah, the
everything
network.
is created,
Yeah.
connected.
Right.
One of the things that I loved that was so brilliant when we were, again, one of your students have attended a lot of your lectures, is when we take the yin yang symbol.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such an aha moment for myself when we took it from a 2D structure into a 3D structure. And so that the white part had the dark hole moving all the way, and the dark hole then became the white light on the other aspect of matter versus not matter, space versus not space, thing versus no thing, and the tension and the energy in the space. And I love how you applied that to our heart, how you applied that to the earth, how it was applied into the entire universe from this, and how layers of dimension are created from the simplest, those simple movements of going in and out of this movement.
Yeah,
Can you
this
talk-
toroidal movement.
The toroidal movement. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. So that's where I was getting to, is that if there's this information that's going in and out, basically that is the fundamental mechanics for consciousness, because consciousness is self-awareness, right?
Yes.
Information going out, you looking in the mirror, right, and then seeing yourself, right? So,
Yes.
so it's this feedback and saying, "Oh, I am," I acknowledge that this is me, right? And so that self-awareness, which is what we call consciousness, is actually a mechanism that's present all the way from the atom to a human being, the complexity of 100 trillion cells that
Yes.
function absolutely perfectly, continuously,
That
dividing.
each have 52 million processes that each of those trillion cells are
Yeah,
doing.
exactly, every second.
Just for miracle makers, just get you're that much of a miracle. 100 trillion cells
Right.
doing 52 million processes perfectly.
Yeah, perfectly every second, and not confused about anything, because your
Yeah.
toe cell doesn't make no cell, and your no cell hopefully doesn't make
Yes.
toe cell, and and they know exactly what's going on, and then each one of those cells is made of 100 trillion atoms,
Yes.
right? So now the complexity, so it's 100 trillion by 100 trillion,
Yes.
right? The complexity is very high, and everything is highly coordinated, because there's been a continuous feedback of information, of increase of complexity, like a fractal equation, where you keep rethrowing the equation, you
Yes.
get more and more complexity. So eventually,
Or in nature, one cell and then complex proteins on top of that cell. Complex proteins then make complex living forms. And so everything in nature, it's like Lego blocks. You have these little Lego blocks. And what you're saying is each of the Lego blocks that build these magnificent towers everywhere, 100 trillion little cells inside those little cells, each have consciousness.
that's right.
Yes.
But not only each cell, but each atom.
Yes.
Meaning that the whole thing is under the same mechanical dynamic, and so it's different level of consciousness,
Yes.
of course, but they exhibit similar behavior, like desire to survival, like
Yeah.
microbes, viruses, and all these things. So basically, you can say, like, it's learning about itself, and when it gets complex enough, then it has enough information to be able to, like, all of a sudden say, I am.
Yes.
I realize that I am, right? So I am, now the feedback becomes obvious, right? And earlier it might not look obvious, like if you look at a rock, but it's in there. The mechanisms are already present.
And we may not have the technology to pick up the vibrational frequency of the rock being aware of itself as a rock holding the tension. It is part of this. And today
and we
can,
don't have the theories to examine that properly.
Although we do look at crystals, and I know crystals we're able to measure, and one particular type of crystal, say rose quartz versus an amethyst, has different frequency, and we can measure a difference between their levels of awareness.
Yeah, well, at least between their frequency, fundamental resonance frequency. But I would say even more nowadays, we're able to entangle.
Yes.
We're able to show entanglement between large objects. So things being entangled was thought to be only possible at the quantum level, meaning that if you shoot an atom with a photon, and it will spit out two photons, and these photons will be entangled, so that if you modify this photon, if you modify the polarity angle of this photon, the other one will modify instantaneously to the same angle, no matter how far they are in the universe.
We've measured this. We've measured two protons in connection with each other.
Photons, yeah.
Photons, two photons in connection. If there is one isolated from the other, whatever happens to one happens to the other. And
no
so
matter how far they are apart.
No matter how far. Just think about how many people you've come in contact with. How many people, and at the photonic level, whatever happens to you happens to them. Whatever happens to them at some level happens to you.
Yeah, because we're all connected. And it might not be a direct entanglement. We might be connected through, a whole bunch of different links, or it might be a direct entanglement. And that's the confusion that's occurring, is that there's this thought that you can be entangled or disentangled, and what I'm showing is no, there's nothing that can ever be disentangled because everything at the atomic level is already entangled. It's just what is the path of entanglement. So if it's a long path, to us it looks like it's disentangled because the information may take a long time to influence the other, right?
Yes.
Like the morphogenic field of the whole planet. But or it might be strongly entangled where it's instantaneous like this. But basically, what I'm saying is that like when this network of entanglement is the information moving through it is what's producing eventually the result of a conscious being emerging from this seemingly, inert, unconscious material that we call material, like that we call minerals and water and all this stuff. Right?
Beautiful. I know you've probably got some stuff.
All I can say is that rarely do I see her as excited as she is right now talking. We just talk so much about personal growth stuff, so this science stuff, because she's a doctor, she's just like, so.
And physics, in high school, I started doing physics and all through college. And so and I've done macro as well as micro. And so I enjoy this so much. And I sit down and I draw diagrams to try and figure it out. When I first saw the flower of life, and I really, for myself, got how everything is so connected through that. And space being no thing, meaning it's not no thing, I'm sorry. Space being not no thing. It's the potential of everything in it when it's not no thing. It's such a double negative there to really make it make sense how it expanded. These waves, this energy existed in two different places, and that created this tension in first level of organization. And then it extended and created this second level of organization, created a third level. And the complexity that came out of those and the models that we can make, like geometry-wise, or the models that we can make and see how many possibilities occur from just that little simple level of organization existing and how it's come out this far at this point. And so I'd love to hear more around your theories around, I believe the further we go out, the deeper we'll be able to see in. Every time we go further out, because we're in this tension, in this dynamic of the further we see out there, the particles. And so I'd love to hear.
I like to think of it the other way around.
Yes, the deeper we go in, the further we'll go out.
Exactly. Yes. Because the deeper we go in, the more understanding we have of the nature of reality, more our technology will develop to allow us to go further out. For instance, we learned eventually how to use electromagnetic waves to produce power, energy. And we control the electromagnetic wave in our day and age today very well, right? We can carry information over microwave, we can, produce power all of our devices and all. So modern society has basically been built on our capacity to control electromagnetic fields. And it's changed our world very dramatically in the last 150 years. Now we're at the point where we need to learn how to control gravitational waves.
Yes, gravitational energy.
That's right, because that will power our next generation device that will allow us to travel through the universe. But in order to do that, we gotta go in further and understand what is the nature of a proton, what is the nature of an electron, what is the nature of consciousness. Those things are connected to a deeper understanding of the structure of space-time and the way the universe functions, and eventually how to make devices to play with the universe in such a way that it produces what we want. For instance, an artificial gravitational field that allow us to lift off the planet instead of burning fuel to try to get to the moon.
That's so beautiful in terms of when we understand gravity and the mechanics of gravity, and gravity is at the center of all mass.
Right.
Gravity is at the center, and for us to understand how to go deeper and deeper in to connect with that, I think in some of the letters that I read that were released after just recently of Einstein's death, his theory was gravity is love.
Right.
This energy, what he called love, that would be discovered. What do you believe is this energy, gravity?
Well, my equations show that gravity is actually the result of the coherent behavior of all these little electromagnetic cloud things that are flying around.
So coherent behavior of all of these things flying around.
Right, the electromagnetic fields. Right.
Yes.
So actually it's a component of the electromagnetic field at the quantum level. And so I'm basically tying quantum electromagnetics directly into the source of gravity.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't make sense to me to be able to say eventually that gravity really is the information of the universe moving, just and as it moves, it creates mass and mass.
Gravity moving is what's creating mass.
Information moving through the network.
Yes.
Right.
So, and information is waves of potential moving. Would you qualify that as sound? Or would
you
it
could
be
associate it with
it's a frequency that is inaudible but exists?
Yeah, that's not audible, but that's going on continuously.
Yes.
The whole thing is talking to itself continuously.
Yes.
It's the music of the spheres, It's the philosopher's stone. It's the whole, and when you realize that and you understand the mechanics of that, now you can go into a laboratory and make a music of the sphere object that will do its own song.
And when it makes that sound and there's something light enough around it and it's a coherent sound, what shows up is coherent forms all around it, measurable. So gravity being as a force of gravitational, I guess, coherence.
Right. It's basically creating, so imagine the space here. It's got this energy in it.
Yes.
And never mind the air atoms.
Yeah.
Okay. The space between the air atoms is not coherent, right? As a whole, like collectively.
But a wave comes through and it connects the coherence.
Well, it creates coherence.
It creates
right. So you can imagine that, like, all of a sudden, you make an object that creates a collective behavior.
Yes.
In the structure of space-time, that is creating like when you pull the plug in your drain, right?
Yes.
It's creating a vortex in space-time there where there was no vortex before. But this one you can control.
And that's what you're working on for free energy.
Well, for gravitational control,
For gravitational control.
Yeah, or energy production.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so right now, all together, how will it be? Is it something that we can control with our mind, with our consciousness, with the...
Well, you're one of those coherent vortex.
Yes.
Right? And so you can actually become aware of it, right? That you're actually creating this smoothie of energy around you. And you can, if you become aware of it, which is, the reason for meditation and all this stuff, then you can increase its spin, its power, its influence.
Yeah, so that just brings us to a great point, which is how do you meditate? How do you bring coherence?
So basically what you want to do is any technique that brings you to the center of your existence, because it's just like a hurricane, right? The hurricane spins at really high velocity, right, on the edge, but in the middle is stillness, is complete
the
stillness.
eye of the
right?
storm
The
is
eye of the
still,
So
yeah.
you want to be the eye of the storm.
Yes.
You don't want to be in the spin. When you're in the spin, it's because you're having a bad day, right?
Yeah.
But when you're in the eye of the hurricane, you're actually in the stillness and the calmness, right? No matter what's happening in your day, you're fine, right?
Yes.
And so you want to take time every day to find that stillness inside of you so that you can stay there as long as you can. You know, you'll fluctuate throughout the day. Things will pull you into the spin and get you upset or whatever. But if you've been there every day, you know how to get back there easy.
Yeah.
If you haven't been there ever or very rarely, then you can't figure out where the center is. And that's when people start to have, like, you know, all sorts of chemical imbalance and all this stuff, because the information is not flowing through properly because there's no good axis of rotation. Your field is going decoherent.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The center is always still of your being, and if you bring your awareness to that center, then more of you is connected to the center.
The center and the spin increase.
Yes.
And it gets stronger and stronger because the center is stiller and stiller.
So the stiller, the more connected you are to the center of your own storm, the stillness within you, the further that goes out.
That's right.
I think that's one of the reasons I try and do something that I've never done every single day. I try and do something different. And I believe you should always try something at least once. And you go out and you expand out here, and you have to connect with courage, or you have to connect with love, or speaking to someone you might not be comfortable speaking to, and you're sending yourself out there on a quest that taps into deeper inner resources.
Right. Very good.
Yeah, and that comes in beautifully, which is all of the biological formulas that we have with medicine right now assume, and I've heard you speak about this, where it's assuming, if we put back into the chemistry what we perceive is missing, then this person will be okay.
Right.
And it doesn't account.
We have that reversed.
Yes.
We think of the chemistry as the source of the problem.
Yes.
When actually the chemistry is the result of the problem, of the state. And so because what's occurring that's directing the chemistry is occurring at a much deeper level of the quantum field. And the state of emotion, your state of emotion, how close you are to that center, is what's making the quantum field more coherent or less coherent. And so if it becomes really highly incoherent, because you're too much in the spin and everything is going sideways, then the chemicals are gonna change. Like, there's gonna be chemical change in your brain and your body and all this, hormones and release and all this, and problems are gonna start to occur.
So the first part of that is there's a spiritual component, then an emotional component, then possibly a mental component that might be involved throughout, that results in this physical result. And we're measuring the physical result rather than, and seeing the physical as the problem, rather than going back to the source of it. And throwing more physical into physical creates more chaos rather than the stillness coming in. And so
so people take, various minerals and so on to try to, like, rebalance the brain and all this stuff.
Or a pain, or or the functioning of the kidneys flow.
When and those things may be useful, in a temporary, emergency situation. And so it has its place, but what needs to be addressed is the source
Yes.
of the imbalance. Why is the liver, doing what it's doing? Why is the chemicals in the brain not correct? Why
The hormone imbalance.
the hormones imbalance. Why are cells in this region of your body deciding they're going to stop communicating with each other, and you have a tumor that grows
Yes.
there? All this has to do with the coherency in which the information is able to flow in the structure of your body, in that sack of water and minerals. And so if it decoheres too far, then disease occur.
Yes.
The ease of information moving through is becoming, the impedance is too high.
Yes.
Things start to heat up. Literally you can do thermal imaging of those
For
regions,
cancer,
and you see it.
Yes.
You see those regions are producing more heat than the
Yes.
rest of the body, and that's because there's impedance, meaning the information can't go through so good. So it's heating up, literally.
And that's what happens with spontaneous healings as well, is a higher frequency of spiritually balanced coherence comes into the field. And the belief of the person that's receiving the healing relaxes enough to where communication can come
Occurs.
back in between the cells.
That's right.
The miraculous healing is this communication of coherence again, each communicating with each other. The dis-ease, the cancer, the biological dysfunction is gone. But unless the person has gotten to their own source, the spiritual cause, the emotional cause, the mental elements that created the physical, and it can be with generations. It could be something passed down generation to generation, unless you've gotten to the source and the cause.
Right, because the field of information is memory.
Yes.
And so it holds memory, right? Actually, I just wrote a paper that we just published with Dr. Amira Valbaker and William Brown on just that. We changed the word space-time to space memory, because without memory there's no time.
Yes.
Right? And so we show that this field of information is what actually is the memory imprint. And so the memory is not in your brain,
Yes.
but memory is a relationship to the information that's in space, that you've laid down in space, in the structure of space as you move through your day.
Yes.
And so basically what happens is that, because you redo your liver,
Yes.
I think within a month.
Yes,
Yeah.
your liver can regenerate.
Within a month.
If part of it was gone, it would completely within a month be fully
well,
back.
no, but even
and
just a normal liver,
Yes.
splits his
Cells.
cells so fast that within a month you have a new liver.
completely.
So every month you're changing liver.
and
right?
every your skin as
and your
well.
skin and stuff. And
Constantly.
it's amazing. Like within
Yeah.
3 years, you've pretty well changed. Your bones is within 3 months. You've
Your
changed
bones
all your
are
bones.
liquid.
Yeah.
As long as you're. Yes, it's amazing.
It's amazing. And so basically, why, if there's a problem with that, with your liver, why is it continuing to make that problem? Since it's dividing the cells so fast, it could repair that problem.
Yeah.
It's because there's information in the space. There's memory
in the
space that is continuing to send the same set of information, so the cells are continuing to make the same set of problems.
Yes.
So actually, if you become aware of that as a
Yes.
healer, for instance, you can actually change the information
Yes.
in the field, in that region, so that when the cell regenerates, they regenerate healthy,
Yes.
tissue instead of damaged tissue, or instead of a tumor, or and if you remove the information fast enough, if you're able to change the information fast enough, there's actually sonic imaging of showing healing where
Instantaneously,
you see
instantaneous
the
healing.
tumor like melt down and disappear, right?
Yes, and skin repair itself.
Yes, and things like that.
Yeah, and the redness or the blood or the bleeding or the bruise
Right.
completely removed within that.
Right.
And then on X-rays, the lung or whatever, liver, the kidneys regrown.
Complete remission.
Or complete remission.
Yeah, and or like, you know, even the placebo effect.
Yes.
Where 30 to 50% of people can be given like a sugar pill.
And get the result that is being proclaimed by whatever the medication is.
Exactly.
Mind over matter, and specifically space.
Yes, mind over space.
Mind over space.
That's right. That's
mind
the
over
key.
Memory,
Mind over memory. That's right.
Space and memories.
Yeah.
That's so brilliant.
Yeah.
I know that you're taking trips around the world as well. You're taking people to Croatia.
Yeah.
Coming up with Jamie Hanover,
Yeah.
which is just so brilliant. Tell us about that trip.
Oh, it should be fun. We're gonna spend like a week on a beautiful cruise boat with about 38 people, a small group. You know, it's not like one of those giant cruise boats, so that's why I like it too. And it's gonna be, you know, Jamie Janover, which has been, he's an incredible musician, but as well, he has been studying this work for a very long time. He's given a lot of lectures and stuff. So he's gonna be doing parts of the lectures. I'm gonna be doing parts of the other lectures. We're gonna visit beautiful sites, you know, it's beautiful bays with snorkeling and beaches and all this stuff. And then we're gonna end up at the Bosnian pyramid.
Yes, the one that discovered recently.
Right.
Yes.
And so at the end of the trip, and so that'll be really fun. I'm trying to see if I can get my friend Klaus Dona to come and meet us there. I'm not sure yet, but it'll be a lot of fun, and it should be a really amazing trip to be able to all be there together for that long, and you know,
to learn. And I know in your lectures I learned so much of the stories, so many things that you don't share out in public unless you're face to face with you, which is
right.
one of the great reasons to come and be part of the lectures and the growth process that happens there. It's quite incredible.
It's gonna be fun. And
we'll be doing specific tools for erasing space memory. I'm very curious about space memory and how to shift this now. Because like you said, healers, if they were able to tune into that, they could. I mean,
very
miraculous
effective.
would be, it'd be so effective,
Yeah, and anybody could do it.
Yeah.
You know, if you understand the principles and you understand the mechanics, all of a sudden it becomes available for everybody to do it. And when you talk to the healers, you know, even like if you read the ancient texts and all this, they all talk about that field of energy.
Yeah.
Yes.
They all talk about, you know, they called it chi or prana or mana.
Yes.
And, you know, all these different cultures talked about this fundamental field of energy that everything emerged from and everything returns to. And when their shaman talks about it, they talk about how they can manipulate the field of energy to create certain effects, you know.
And so my first teacher
healing.
was my grandmother, who taught me about energy healing
and
about how to. She was a village healer.
In which culture?
In Pakistan, in India.
Pakistan.
It was still India when she was learning.
Okay.
And so the Indian culture, quite a bit around knowing everything has a consciousness, everything is energy, and within that, the memory of its wholeness was the key in all healing.
There you go.
Is you bring the memory, the full effect of knowing it is this way,
right?
And having that joy, celebration, heat inside yourself, passion inside yourself, creates it in the physical environment all around us.
Right. Absolutely. And so what I'm saying is actually very ancient.
Yes.
It's nothing new at all to most of the ancient civilization and to, you know, to the spiritual community. It's just that I found the equations that proves that this is not just some woo-woo thing, or it's not just some dogma or some religion.
Yes.
It's actually the way things work. And the material world is actually sourced by that same energy. It's not like you got the spiritual world over here and the material world over here. And this is a big problem because the spiritual people tend to like want to stay away from the material world.
Yes.
And the material world, the materialistic people, like scientists, and tend to not want to have anything to do with consciousness or spirituality. But it's actually like these labels have to go away because it's just one thing. It's this field of energy, and matter emerged from it, and my equation proves it, and gravity emerged from it, and consciousness emerged from it.
So we've got the science of miracles.
Science of miracles, that is exactly
the
it.
miraculous. Oh, and your website is the
Resonance
Project.
Right, but the website is resonance.is. Or resonance is.
Resonance is.
Yeah. So resonance.is. People can go there and they can actually participate in a program that's called the Delegate Program.
Yes.
Which is a 12 weeks program that's like got all the information,
It's
all
incredible.
the resources.
I've done the Delegate Program and
It's
I've
a lot of
enjoyed
fun.
it. It's so much fun.
Yeah, and I get on twice. I get on for 2 hours every month.
Yes.
And I answer questions and stuff for people that are taking the course. And and then you get to connect with community all around the world.
And you get to understand how to heal yourself and those you love at the deepest levels. I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome.